make full screen then.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next Long COVID Plus conversation. Today we have a great guest, Dr. Pedro Pricladnitzky, who is a professor and researcher in the history of modern philosophy, with interests in metaphysics, philosophy of nature, epistemology, and the philosophical canon. He studied at the Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, and also stayed in Princeton during his studies, and worked as a postdoctoral researcher in many places around the world, including Rio de Janeiro. Last year, he has been a research associate at the University of Paderborn in Germany, and was affiliated with the Center for the History of Women Philosophers and Scientists, that he's still collaborating with. He has edited books and published articles on Descartes, Cavendish, and Du Châtelet. And today, Pedro will speak about phenomenology and smell loss in long COVID. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Eva, for organizing this very interesting, very important series reflecting on topics that are not, for many perspectives, not taken care of intellectually, or also in public politics. And also you have to reflect on this and some outcomes of the pandemic that we still not completely able to appreciate it. So the reflections on this series have been great and very interesting and very important. So today, my presentation is the loss of the presumed world, phenomenology, and of smell loss in long COVID. Yeah, so I want to start presenting by, let's begin with a simple experiment, or let's say a description of a simple experiment. Take a blueberry jelly bean and pinch your nose shut with your fingers. Now chew slowly. You may notice, for example, the sweetness on your tongue, the soft texture, but beyond that, the experience is strangely blank. There is no fruitiness, no darkness, no hint of the berry. It's oddly anonymous. Now release your nose, swallow, and gently breathe through your nose. Suddenly, the gentle, slightly tangy sweetness of the blueberry rises. Subtle, round, almost floral. It blooms not on the tongue, but somewhere behind it, as if the memory of some warm berry had been released from within. This isn't taste per se, this is smell, arriving retronasally through the back of the nasal cavity from the mouth to the olfactory receptors. It's the second pathway of smell in action, the one we don't often notice but rely on deeply on truly recognized flavor. But this experiment does more than demonstrate the mechanics of flavor. It reveals something more subtle, the strange emptiness that occurs when smell is absent. The jelly bean without retronasal smell isn't just less flavor. It feels incomplete, disconnected. It lacks identity. And in the gap, we glimpse that it might like to live with anosmia, the complete loss of smell, not as a curiosity, but as a fundamental shift in how we experience the world. Smell, we realize, does more than deliver sensory information. It fuels our experience of the world. It gives dimension to food, warmth to memory, texture to pleasure. Its sudden reappearance in the experiment, like the quiet unfolding of a blueberry essence in our mouth, reminds us that even that we don't notice is essential to the atmosphere of being alive or being present or conscious. So keep, for example, here the structure of a human nose. You can see the traditional pathway of that we recognize of smell, that orthonasal olfaction. and the retronasal through the mouth, so through the nasopharynx, and of course the gustation, which happens on the tongue. It's much more basic in a structure, and it's combined with the retronasal smell or olfaction to combine our experience of things, and then also with the orthonasal. Yeah. Okay. So now the vanishing from awareness to absence. So smell grounds us in the world. And for example, in the moment when the blueberry flavor floods the senses, regarding our experiment, when the jelly bean becomes more than sugar, we realize how deeply smell anchors us in the world. Its quiet absence during the first phase of the experiment, it's strangely disorienting. And for many people who contracted COVID-19, that absence can be long-term, and perhaps in some cases, not sure how that can come back and how it can come back. Yeah. So what happens? The perspectives are, I then can realize that what happens in COVID-19 and the olfaction. It seems like there is a biological impact, a damage to the olfactory epithelium from immune responses. There is the T cells that combine to structure our olfactory epithelium are damaged. Can be a more severe damage on the proper olfactory neurons that are deep in our olfactory bulb, and that's also the persistent inflammation can be due to problematic and impaired neurodegeneration. Recent studies have shown that MRI presents a difference in brain activity with people with smell loss, and also, which can be interesting, the neuroplasticity and trying to reconfigure how to smell things in other areas of the brain. Data, some more data. So in some recent cohorts, it seems that up to 53.5% people of COVID-19 experience anosmia in the acute phase of the infection. But for many, which is it's good that it resolves it within days or weeks, but for others, it lingers. So, and between 10 to 20% is still affected with some smell dysfunction after 6 months, and 14% still have deficits after 3 years in recent studies. Some people also may think that their smell are completely recovered, but never do a smell test and not realizing perhaps if it's still affected or not, but these are the numbers. So the jelly bean experiment becomes a daily reminder of loss. It's so not only a curiosity, but it's an experience of how deeply smell saturates our embeddedness in the world, and usually without notice. Also, smell in some also recent perspectives, people are asked which sense they will give up. Normally, most times they give up on. They say they give up on smell. Also, research with teenagers some years ago asked if they prefer to delete a social media account or lose the sense of smell, and the majority of answers prefer to lose the sense of smell instead of deleting a social media account, for example. Yes, but there is a strange continuum of smell, and smell dysfunction isn't simply on or off, it exists on a shifting spectrum. For many, especially with long COVID, the experience involves distortion, inconsistency, and uncertainty. These conditions highlight how delicate and dynamic our sense of smell is, and profoundly altering our perception of the world. So, for example, we have hyposmia, with a partial loss of smell when scents become faint, muted, or ghost-like. It seems like biting into our orange and tasting only a distant memory of citrus. So it's a very diminished experience of smell. Smell it's there, but it's not clear that it's there. So it's a clear perspective of confusion and this diminished experience. There are also parosmia, which is one of the most strange experience in regarding smells, which is distorted smell perception. Familiar scents become grotesque or revolting. For example, toast smells like burning plastic or sewage, overwhelming and wrong. Also, for example, coffee smells like something that got rotten. Onions and garlics are characteristic triggers of smell distortion, which is could be something that in the attempt of the body to repair the damage in the neurons, the pathways of information are also how it seems that there can be a metaphor like instrument, a musical instrument out of tune. So it's trying to tune it up. So in this process of recovery, things are very strange, and it hits you uh, almost unexpectedly. So you lost your smell during COVID, and you recovered parts of it and during the recovery, things change completely. And this process could be take there are reports that this process of parosmia, the distortion of smell, taking many months and sometimes many years to present. And also it's not clear if it's the complete sense of smell will be back or not. Yes, but we have some interesting also data and research in how to retrain our sense of smell. That's also very interesting phenomenologically. Okay, another distortion is called phantosmia, which is the smelling some kind of a smell hallucination, smelling others that are not present. So something triggers our sense of smell because it's impaired, and it's not clear how it triggers or what it triggers, and also because biologically our sense of smell, it's important to tell us about the environment, about dangers. So it's triggering more frequently. So for example, one of common experience of smell hallucination or phantosmia is the experience of something burning. Is the experience of something smoke. So to give you this alert response. Yeah. So these impairments, the complete loss and the hyposmia, parosmia, and phantosmia, also sometimes this is not clearly progressively. They can happen sometimes every time at once. They are coexistent somehow, and they also fluctuating this experience. So this is the emotional cost. Some many experience people report the idea of emotional flatness or the experience of living behind the glass. So data also regarding this, that people with smell dysfunction present 40 to 76% chance of presenting symptoms of depression. Anxiety also is common linked to loss of control, safety concerns, and uncertainty about the environment in general and about the structure of the self perception structure, and also social isolation is an important factor regarding smell dysfunction. So all of this points to a deeper disruption in one's connection to the world and others. So in reports found, for example, there are recent papers, recent studies with reports and interviews with people with smell loss, how they are feeling about the world, about their perception, their symptoms, and their new somehow characteristics. So one of the main complaints is trivialization by health professionals. Others, it's this kind of invisible impairment. So for example, everybody forgets that I can smell. Even my wife, it's not like being blind. People just forget. This is one of the answers in the interviews. So some people also point to emotional disconnection and relational loss. For example, my children still smell like my children, but I don't get that connection anymore. This is one of the answers. Loss of pleasure in food culture exclusion. For example, I don't talk about food anymore. It's not a pleasure for me. So it becomes a problem for nutrition and also a problem of displeasure. Altered sense of self and home. This is also a deep perspective regarding smell loss. For example, I can smell my house and feel the home. Not smelling like myself has a great impact. I don't feel like I am me anymore. So these are other answers important in these interviews. Psychological consequences, depression, anxiety. See, for example, that some people say, I feel discombobulated, mildly depressed. I cry sometimes. Neurobiological, biological note, since the pandemic, for example, it's shrinkage of the olfactory bulb is now treated as a biomarker for depression. Social withdrawal and existential flatness. For example, that this is also the inspiration of this perspective of this image here. So someone says that sometimes I feel I am in my room. I'm in a room. I'm sort of behind a barrier, behind a glass, so to speak, and I feel a little bit like that emotionally with people sometimes. I know they are there, and it's someone I like or love, but there is some connection that is missing. So this is a report about the loss and alteration, dysfunction of smell. And for example, to understand deeply this experience of the phenology behind smell, you have this interesting, very famous description or consciousness of the emotional and memory and connection brought by smell experience in the search of the lost time of Marcel Proust. And the first volume, there's this description, the first volume, Sun's Way, there's a description of the smell of madeleines through an experience on a Sunday afternoon. So the act is simple, a madeleine dipped in tea, but in Proust's way, this small, almost mechanical gesture becomes the doorway to one of literature's most profound meditations on memory, time, and the self. This scene, often referred as the Madeleine moment or the Proust phenomenon, marks the birth of a literature tradition and of dealing of very careful constructed description or awareness of sensations. So the memory triggered by a sensory stimulus, particularly the memory triggered by smell or taste, for the narrator of the Swan's Way, this moment collapses the distance between past and present. The taste and smell of the tea-soaked Madeleine awaken not a memory as an idea, but a memory as an experience. The smell of Sundays in Combray, the presence of his aunt, the entire atmosphere of his childhood. Proust shows that smell doesn't recall the past, it somehow resurrects it. The memory comes not through effort or analysis, but through the body, through sensation. It's not retrieved, but relieved. And this is key. The memory does not arrive with clarity at first. It begins as a feeling, as an unplausible somehow joy, so something that takes you as a precious essence. Proust describe that someone with experience this must sit, wait, and let it surface. So the structure of this involuntary memory, it is not summoned by will, it summons us somehow. So there is clearly in this Proust description a philosophical weight of smell. So the smell somehow connects us to our own existence. It reveals non-linear flow of time, the fragility of memory, and the deep connection between body, mind, and soul. So it somehow bypasses the intellect. So it's very powerful description of this experience. And also the idea, although powerful, it's also hard to express. It's somehow resistance to language, and it's very clear in the way it's described by Proust, how it's difficult. Somehow smell is preverbal, embodied, and associative. Also, the structure of the brain, so if we different of the other senses, smell doesn't go through the thalamus, and which is the common sense perspective, and also it's not well connected with language structures, but it's very well connected to emotional and memory structures. So this is perhaps and how it connects us with ourselves in the world, but also problematically with language. Also, the idea is not only through small things or particular things, there is a smellscape as a landscape or a soundscape or other perspectives and the idea. So there is this anthropologist and geographer J. Douglas Porteous coined this term smellscape. So as idea, immersive shifting atmosphere. Smellscapes are subjective but shared, changing within season, wind, and perspective. But this presents the idea that we are surrounded by smell, and you use smell all the time, even unconsciously, to arrange ourselves and situate ourselves in the world. So this perception, and it is quite important to understand. We can use, for example, in a more philosophical reflection on this, we can use, for example, the structure of phenomenology theory, which, for example, Merleau-Ponty, in his classical work, Phenomenology of Perception, developed the idea that perception is embodied. So our whole body, our whole complex of personhood, it's present in each act of perception. So it's not only a distinct agent that perceives the world, it's a combined. See? So smellscape also present this idea that it's grounding us. So it gives meaning to our experience of the world. So to smell is to be affected, and to be affected is to be alive, and to smell is something that grounds us in our context. Also, and this grounding present the idea that smell and situates the body. So there is this quote from the Phenomenology of Perception: the body is our general medium for having a world. So in a fundamental perspective, our smell, it's that clearly gives us the context of smell. It's not only space perspective, it's a surrounding perspective. So this loss of smell can be considered this loss of anchorage. So it's the loss of the perspective of putting our feet on the ground. It's existential, and it's loss, it's existential disorienting. Yeah. So the loss, coming to my conclusion here, the loss of smell is the loss of the presumed world, is the loss of something that we taken for granted, and we don't realize how important it is, how it's function as a grounding experience. And when smell disappears, we lose ties to belonging, memory, and self-understanding. Familiar places like kitchens, books, loved ones feel hollowed, present but strange. So also to a quote of Phenomenology of Perception of Ponty, to be a body is to be tied to a certain world. And then this connection to the certain world, when you lose smell or you have a smell dysfunction, it doesn't seem the same world anymore. And our life world, which is many pre-reflective, needs to be reconstructed. So smell loss is profound, impacting memory, intimacy, and self-understanding, but also, which is to conclude with a positive perspective, studies have shown that smell training, which is the act of selecting some true essential oils, we can select and do a mindful reconnection, and it is showing very good results in the ability of our neuroplasticity, and also the ability of reconnect to smell and regain the sense of smell. And also this experience of regaining the sense of smell, of reconstructing one sense of smell, it's a perspective of reconnecting to a world and getting back to a connection that was lost, and it's a very powerful experience as well. And there are other also interesting forms of treatment, also of options on there, but smell training, which is very interesting and it's powerful in getting back. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for this very rich and also poetic presentation. I have a couple of questions, but I would first like to open up the floor to others. Is there anybody else who wants to ask something? Lucia, you have a question?
Thank you very much, Pedro. This was very interesting. I never thought about the smell in this very deep manner, and it helps me as a clinician to listen to our patients and to know what is happening in their mind and body. So your last sentences about the training of the smell really touched me too, because it gives me hope that making a reconnection with a mind-body technique can help you to bring back at least a bit of the smell, or is it possible to get it back completely? So then the second question is, can we see the loss of smell as a loss of the connection with the part of the brain who is translating the smell via the olfactory bulb? So sorry, it's just two questions in one.
No, thanks for the question. If I understood, yes. So there are also results pointing to two different perspectives regarding this. Yes, through smell training and other techniques that are possible. There are, for example, recently there are surgery that should change a little. There's changing the cavities and how to because to approach, and it seems possible, but it's still in the beginning. But smell training, it's almost costless and it's effective, and it's possible to regain the same structure that is there, but also to improve neuroplasticity around the olfactory bulb, so to train that neurons to become olfaction neurons. So this is also happening. So
great.
So some MRIs of people that lost the sense of smell and regain it show that different pathways of connecting smell are created, and it seems similar in somehow some cases of people have some for example a neurological structure that was damaged, and through the rehabilitation these pathways are reconstructed in the same place, but also perhaps in a different connection. So this the both experiences are being observed.
Great.
And seem, of course, it's not clear because it's at the bottom. It's also always subjective, so it's complicated to see how it's completely better, how it's completely regained. But yes, the data are showing very good improvement, and some people there are even long losses are getting back to some kind of complete, if not the same sense of smell back, but a new complete smell experience.
Great. So that understripes the neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
And yes, especially in people who have let's say the ugly smell, who smell burnt bread or even worse, rotten things all the time. That must be a hell. And you explained this very explicit to us.
Yes. For example, in my case, yes, I would say that since I lost my sense of smell until recover somehow, it was around a year. Around a year. And sometimes I still see some differences and some, oh, okay, I was able to get something that was not able anymore, and it seems so it's continuous to show differences and adaptations, it seems. And I had my, for example, I had a case of parosmia with milk. And not only milk, but anything that had milk on it.
Okay.
So for a time, I was able to identify some ingredient, even if it was very industrial and processed food. I put it on. There's milk on this because the new milk and it was not something pleasant. It was not something pleasant. It's something like something, the taste of something and the experience of something that was rotten. Yeah.
Too bad. Yeah.
But yes, and you start to, and it was the exercise of consciousness, and trying, okay, this thing is smell, and trying to reconnect the memory I had of milk, and it took time, but yes,
Yeah.
somehow.
So you have to do that with lot of patience and consciousness.
Yes. Yeah, and it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. Yeah.
And being aware of that you're doing an experiment to get rid of your loss of smell. So who can help you if you're looking for help?
Yes. For example, there are initiatives as there's this Smell and Taste Association. That's a website there are descriptions of how to do smell training. There are a lot of texts and also videos about to self-manage on how to look for special experts on this, or mostly on Europe or United States are also present. And I think so you can also, that if you can directly buy the essential oil kits to do the smell training. You can, there's also how to do this with things you have in your household.
Okay. Yeah. So they are nearby, and then it's cheap to do it. Yes, as you told us.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Is there anybody else who immediately wants to ask a question? No, then I will go. I was thinking about the phenomenological status of smell in relation to sight and hearing, because we have quite clear narratives in our societies for the loss of sight and hearing. So when people go blind or deaf, I think others sort of know what this entails. And we don't really have that in relation to smell. And I think that maybe this to the loss of smell. But I'm wondering, so there's definitely a political point to be made there. We don't have the narratives, we don't have the understanding, and therefore patients are marginalized by doctors, and they are also they feel more isolated perhaps than when there is like a cultural narrative, for example, with blindness, even though existentially this might be similarly affecting. So I'm wondering if you think that smell grounds us in a specific way in the world. You hinted a bit at this when you said that it's connected to emotion and memory and less to language. Yes. So how do you see the connections between the senses and our way of being in the world? Yeah, that's the first question.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So regarding this asymmetry of the importance presented to sight and hearing, and the less caring, for example, with smell, I think it's really, as you said, the idea that you have the narratives already constructed and of the perspective of sight and sound. And if you go to the history of philosophy, for example, there's almost an obsession with sight. Almost many, or that's almost any, but in many classical texts in the history of philosophy that deal with perception present their examples through examples of sight. And then a little bit less common examples of smell, of sound, and then even less. And for example, there is a quote that I remember that is Immanuel Kant present saying that smell is not so important and things like that. But I think fundamentally the case is we have, since philosophy, most of this this effort to present a clear concept and a clear description of our a way of interpreting the world and how to construct and smell is problematic in regards to developing through language. So it seems this unbalanced, so this difficulty of presenting smell through language. But one way of doing this, then, so this is a little bit the effort of this presentation, is to suggest that not only that through the effort of phenomenology, of this exercise of conceptually understanding the tools that we have as human beings to understand ourselves and understand the world through ourselves, we have a possibility to understand the smell better. And understanding the smell better, we can then later construct a narrative for smell. So in a way, this presentation it's a first effort or some steps towards the construction of a narrative of a smell experience. But and in this case, I can suggest there is this book from this book is called Smellosophy from 2020. It was before the pandemic, but was released in the beginning of 2020. This is a book dedicated to the sense of smell, philosophically central sense of smell. It's from Anne-Sophie Barvich. There's also another philosopher which is for many years it is involved with wine tasting and wine experience, and there's philosophical reflections of the consciousness of smell, which there are a couple of texts from him, which is Barry Smith. So there are also some efforts regarding this. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm also reminded of it's a bit similar to philosophers writing about touch. I'm reminded of a text by Irigaray, who also makes this point about sight, and then of course Merleau-Ponty writes about touch, and who's also, it's in the phenomenological tradition. But you spoke about smell. I indeed noticed this lack in the body of literature. I have to think more about it also in relation to the subjectivity and individuality that you describe, because that's in a sense true for all senses, but there's something very personal about scent. A second question that we briefly touched upon before we began this session, which is not really a question, but it's something that you now opened my eyes to when you were speaking, or actually maybe not my eyes, but my nose, is the potential of training our sense of smell and becoming more aware of it in sharing the world better with non-human beings, because of course all animals have their own sensory apparatus, and we know that certain companion animals like dogs, but also of course many others, are much better at smelling than humans and actually navigate the way in this sense. I'm now also curious how this relates to emotion and memory and the relation to language, but I will look that up unless you know something about it. I will look that up after our conversation. But I'm curious if you came across any literature or philosophical insights about Yeah, the multi-species implications of smell and being embodied in the world. Because I think that what you are also suggesting is that, or you're not actually suggesting it, but it could be seen as an implication from what you say, is that if we take smell more seriously, we ground ourselves perhaps more firmly in the world with others who also do that. So this is not really a question, but I'm curious about if you have any reflections on this.
Yes, yes, yes. Thanks also for this comment. Yes, so I don't recall precisely. So there is this comparison between multi-species and smells, but there is some interesting studies. I don't remember exactly. It was done in the United States, but I don't remember exactly where the university. Of course, I can check it up and I can write you about this. But the study is very interesting. Uh, so the idea is to show that the perspective is that animals in general, or at least mammals, you can be more certain of that, have a very powerful sense of smell, and use them it very of a manner very powerful to guide themselves through existence in the world. Our human, we somehow, at least consciously, presenting this less and less. And one of hypotheses was the idea of, and then humans being become bipeds. So we are standing tall, so the sight somehow open up, and the sound somehow open up differently. But our sense of smell, it's capable of connecting now perhaps more like billions of combinations and triggering. This experiment was to train the sense of smell by asking the volunteers to lay on the ground and try to connect with that perspective and see what happens. And some of this was doing blindfolded, and so actually just guiding through smell and touch, of course. But yes, and the idea was that the sense of smell developed more and become more connected with different ways of perceiving the world. So our position in space and how our sense of somehow our nose became standing somehow changed also the way we are approaching smell consciously, because unconsciously the idea is when you enter a room, perhaps consciously you're seeing things, and I should sit there, I have to go there, this is my friend or some family member. But unconsciously it seems that you are one of the first things you do, you're smelling everything. So also and this, of course, and yes, so it seems that thinking consciously about smell, it becomes clear how smell is grounding. It's powerfully grounding. So if you open a room and it's completely blank of smell, the experience, you might not notice you're missing smell, but the experience is, this is strange. This is not right. And if you smell, okay, yes, there is a floral thing, but it's most of the time unconscious. And the exercise of bringing this bringing this to the surface of consciousness, it's deeply grounding.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm also reminded, because I often say that we need to learn to listen better, that this is our task as humans, but this also means listening with the nose. So I think that's a good suggestion. And I was reminded also of research that says that dogs can smell the time, because they smell outside what time of day it is. So that's also a way of orienting ourselves in time.
Yes. I also read something about dogs and smell abilities, about the fading of a smell for a dog is quite clear how it's fading bit by bit. And this fading, for example, of companion, it's the process of dogs of mourning. So this fading, one of the process of mourning, so that very powerful smell become less and less and less and less absent. And this is the process of mourning for dogs, for example.
Yeah, that's a very beautiful example also. Thank you. Is there anyone who wants to ask another question? No? Then I can only thank you, Pedro, very much for this thought-provoking talk, and also for the tools that you gave us to navigate the world differently and perhaps better. And I appreciate that a lot. So yes, thank you, and I hope to see everyone who watches this and who is here now next time with our next conversation.
Thanks,
Thank
Eva.
you. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Let me see.